Alright, we're out on the range today, but it's snowy and crappy enough you probably won't have to bear with any gunfire in the background. You may have seen a video that I did on an introduction to black powder guns. In that video, I purposely left out cap and ball revolvers. Loading, shooting, troubleshooting cap and ball revolvers is a complex enough subject I wanted to talk about just this one all by itself. This is a Ruger Old Army cap and ball revolver, and I've had it for quite a while. And today we're going to load it, shoot it, demonstrate some of the ways of how it works, and I've got a couple other cap and ball revolvers we're going to shoot too. All that having been said, here's the boring part where I have to talk for a couple of minutes. Bear with me. Recently I've watched a few videos on YouTube about cap and ball revolvers, and I've by no means seen them all, I've just seen a few. And from those videos, and even more so from the comments on them, I'm seeing that there is a lot of misinformation out there. There's a lot of people advising other people to do things that are just plain wrong. And I really felt the need to get some information out there that's right. And yes, I understand how self-aggrandizing and condescending that sounds, and I don't mean to be, but I don't want anybody to lose a finger or an eye while shooting their black powder gun. In a lot of videos I do, you'll find that I don't feel the need to go on and on about my accolades or my accomplishments. There's some guy who's made quite a few YouTube videos, and I can't remember his name, bear with me. It sounds like booze. It's Jägermeister. No, the other guy. Anyway, he has a habit of saying things, "I'll compare my resume with anybody." When you say something like that, all I do is turn the video off. I find people like that very tedious. That's one reason why I don't feel the need to do it. However, on this particular subject, I do feel the need to say a little bit about my resume, at least as it pertains to this. I bought this revolver with my paper route money when I was 12 years old. I've been doing this a while. I have been to well over 100 black powder shooting competitions. And at least in terms of pistol shooting, I've won more than I haven't won. I've been to a couple of dozen Mountain Man rendezvous. And in terms of pistol shooting, I've won more than I haven't. In fact, at one time I was the president of a black powder club. I've shot this pistol recreationally, I've shot it in competition, I've used it in hunting. I've killed quite a few squirrels and rabbits with this gun. In short, this is a subject I happen to be quite knowledgeable about. Okay, all that having been said, let's get to the pertinent things of showing you how this thing works. This revolver is stainless steel, so when you shoot it, take it home, clean it, you don't have to lube it up really heavily, but a lot of them that are blued steel, after you shoot it and then clean it, you store it with a lot of oil in it. So when you bring it out to the range, if you load it, that oil will foul your powder and the gun won't work right. So a lot of times what you do is you start with just putting caps on your nipples here, shooting just the caps and burning that oil out. This one I don't have to put a lot of oil on, so I don't feel the need to burn it out. Oh, and yes, that's right, I said nipple. So, okay, let's have our Beavis and Butthead moment. He said nipple. Alright, now let's get on with it. First thing you do when you load this is you put the powder in. Now you'll notice my powder flask has a lot of duct tape on it. Cheap flasks like this have cheap welds that crack, and you fix it by wrapping it in duct tape. Yeah, it looks cheesy, but what can you do? Powder flask like this has this measure on it, and this unscrews and you can put different size measures on it. This one is 25 grains. The way this works is you press this with your thumb, open a valve, turn it upside down, fill that measure with powder, close the valve, turn it right side up again, and you got 25 grains. Now you see I'm loading this chamber directly from the flask, even though I said never do that. I make an exception for the cap and ball revolver because the chances of having an ember, of course right now I haven't shot it yet today, so the chances are 0, but the chances of having an ember in there, even after you fired it, are so remote that I'll just go ahead and load this. You'll see some people when they load these will load powder patch ball, powder patch ball. That's a slow way to do it. Just go ahead and powder up all 6 chambers. You just have to make sure that you can look in there and that you don't double charge a chamber. Now I'm loading this with 25 grains. This pistol's rated for a maximum of 40 grains, but if you do that, that's generally not your most accurate shooting. Now the next thing I do is I put in this little felt wad. In this particular gun, you really don't have to use these, but there's a couple of reasons that you can. One of them is that when you load it less than the 40 grains it's designed as a maximum, the loading bar will only push the bullet down so far, and it'll leave a little gap between the ball and the powder if you're only using 20 or 25 grains. This wad fills in that gap. You'll see some people will do that with cornmeal or malto-meal or what's that, cream of wheat. You can do that, but wow, that's just a hassle. Next thing you do, after you get your wads in there, is you put your ball in there. Now this gun is .44 caliber and it's designed to use a .457 round ball. And as soon as I say that, people want to say that I'm wrong. No, it's not a .44 caliber. The literature that came with this revolver said .44 caliber, use .457 ball. Many years after I got this, a colleague of mine bought the exact same revolver and it said use .457 ball, but it said that the revolver was a .45 caliber. What can I tell you? If you buy commercially made balls, they are spherical. If you mold them yourself like I do, there's a flat spot on the top called a sprue, and you generally want to have that flat spot facing up. There's people that'll say face down. Well, yeah, if it faces down, then you can't see where it is. And then you just load these in place with the loading bar. And you see what I mean, how it'll only go down so far? The felt wads have another purpose besides just as a filler, and we'll get into that in a minute. You'll also notice that I'm not using a loading stand. I'm just doing this all by hand. I don't mean to sound condescending or insulting, but if you need a loading stand to load one of these, you're really lacking in muscular coordination. And if you knew how uncoordinated I am, that's saying something. So if you need a loading stand because you can't manage to get this ball in there and keep the sprue up, go see your neurologist. N, November, neurologist, not urologist. Okay, and you've got your 6 balls in here. And you'll notice that they'll actually have a little shave of lead that comes off that when you load it. Next is you put on your percussion caps. And these are in my capper, which is tied to me. Loading caps by hand, especially when it's really cold out, is a hassle. Get a capper. Not all cappers fit all guns, so make sure you get one that fits your gun. And you just stick your 6 caps on here. And there you go. So what you've done is you've got propellant, projectile, primer, all in this. You've actually built 6 cartridges in the gun. Now, if you have not been paying any attention up till now, pay attention to this. This is a crucial thing. I put the caps on here. The caps have to be seated and sit tight on there. These aren't really tight. You have to press the caps into place by lowering the hammer on there and then pressing it with your thumb. You can see the safety concern of doing this. If your thumb slips off, it could go off. Also, even while you're pressing it like this, you may press hard enough to set it off. I've actually seen that happen. Somebody was seating his caps, just like I'm doing, pressed on it, and bang! It went off. Luckily, he was on the range, on the firing line, pointed down range. Everything was fine. When you load this, you must understand there will come a day when as you seat the caps, it goes off. And you must do so in a place and in a direction where it's okay that it does. Downrange, in the clearing barrel, whatever. You'll also see that between the chambers there are notches. Now, not all guns have these, but this one does. And you rest the hammer down between 2 chambers. Now if it gets hit, it won't go off. And now, at long last, we're ready to fire. One of the things about these guns is that a lot of people will tell you cap and ball revolvers are not accurate. Well, I've got a target down there at 25 yards, so let's shoot this and see how we do. Well, there's your 6 shots. You see this one that's a little out? I don't know if you could hear that in the audio of the tape, but that was a hang fire where the cap goes off a microsecond before the powder goes off, and that's the result. But anyway, bottom line, are these accurate? Yes, they are. The assertion that cap and ball revolvers are not accurate is, well, not accurate. And remember, this doesn't just measure the gun, but my ability to shoot it. Reality is, if you took my shakiness out of the equation, these bullets would probably all be touching each other, except, of course, that one. So, cap and ball revolvers, accurate. Okay, let's talk about how powerful a cap and ball revolver is. Now, the first thing you might notice is I'm not in the same place I was before. That was yesterday. We ran out of light. Today, not only is it the next day, but I'm also 300 miles away at one of our training facilities. So I've traded in the snow for mud. Anyway, cap and ball revolvers, how powerful are they? I don't want to get into velocities and all that kind of thing because there are so many variables, a very big one being barrel length. Barrel length is a big thing on any gun, but on black powder guns it's paramount. There's also the amount of powder that you use can vary so greatly, not just in the amount, but in the kind. Are you using 2F, 3F, 4F, or Pyrodex, or some other kind of black powder substitute? So I figured a good way to do it, take our favorite target, soda jugs, shoot the cap and ball revolver, and compare it to a couple other guns like a 38 and a 45 Colt. So let's see what we do. 38 Special. Okay, that was pretty cool. And no, those weren't hollow points, they're just round-nosed lead bullets, trying to keep things as consistent as I can. 45 Colt. Okay. 44 caliber cap and ball revolver. That wasn't bad at all. Now granted, that's loaded up a little greater than the 25 grains I was using yesterday, but you can see what it can do. In reality, ballistically, is it that powerful? Not really. And because you're using an almost pure lead ball, when it comes to penetrating things like cinder blocks and car doors, you're not going to get much out of it. But believe me, talking about shooting game like deer or rabbits or what have you, these have more oomph than you might think. Now here's a neat cap and ball revolver. It's a 5-shot 31 caliber, and you load it with 12 grains of powder out of this itty-bitty cute little flask. The projectile it uses is this .320 ball, which is actually slightly smaller than a double-aught buckshot pellet. Let's shoot a soda jug with this and see what kind of effect we get. Little bitty guns like this were popular with gold panners and those kind of people because they could just put it in their pocket and do whatever work they needed to do, and they still had a gun. Well, let's see how powerful it is. Well, that's kind of neat, but no, not all that powerful. However, in the world of guns, it's a whole lot more than nothing. This is a different cap and ball revolver. It's a modern replica of a Remington model 1858. Now, earlier we used those wads and I told you they act as a spacer, but they also have a different purpose. That purpose is to prevent chain fires. This doesn't have any wads or any grease, it's just powder and ball. Let's see if we get a chain fire. Did you hear that? That was a chain fire. 2 went off at once. All right, now I've got the revolver completely cleared and I can explain what a chain fire is. You saw all that extra smoke and what sounded like a lot louder percussion when it went off because 2 chambers went off at once. What happens in a chain fire is the chamber lined up with the barrel goes off, and then flame gets out of there and ignites adjacent chambers, and sometimes 2, sometimes 3, sometimes all of them go off in a chain, hence chain fire. Over the years, I've heard a lot of people try to explain what causes chain fires and how to prevent them. One of the popular notions is that the flame of the cap you intend to set off goes to adjacent chambers and goes around a loose cap and sets off that powder. I hear a lot of people say that. That is not true. I've actually done several experiments with several revolvers where I loaded all 6 chambers but only capped 1 and then fired that. Rotate, reload, cap the adjacent chamber, fire that, so you're not using the same chamber all the time. I did that 50 rounds of this particular revolver, got 0 chain fires. I repeated it 50 rounds on 2 other revolvers, got the same results, 0 chain fires. Even when there were no caps on adjacent chambers. That is not what causes a chain fire. What causes a chain fire is the space between the cylinder and the barrel. Flame shoots out of that, goes around the ball of the adjacent chamber, and sets that powder off. You'll hear people say that if you use an undersized ball, that because it's loose, powder will go around and cause a chain fire. That's correct. This revolver calls for a 4.54 ball. Some require a 4.51. If you put a 4.51 in this, it'll be loose and you'll have more chain fires. However, that does not mean that an oversized ball will prevent a chain fire. This calls for 4.54. I loaded it with 4.57s and still got a chain fire. In fact, with this particular revolver, I rarely can get through all 6 rounds without a chain fire. So, how do you prevent that? Remember I said the wads act as a filler and they have another purpose? That's their purpose, to prevent chain fires. If I used wads in this revolver, I've shot hundreds of rounds through it, never had a chain fire. Wads will prevent that. You'll see people put big globs of grease on here. That's the other way to do it. Grease is a great way to prevent chain fires. I don't use it because it's so messy and the wads do the same thing just as easily. The bottom line to the whole thing is, chain fires are caused by flame going around the ball in the adjacent chamber, and they are prevented by using wads or grease. Or if you want to get really, belt and suspenders about it, use both. That is what causes them. That's how to prevent them. Okay, I've got one more cap and ball revolver I want to show you, and it's kind of a neat one. The revolving carbine. This is based on a Remington 1858, but it's not a revolver that's been modified. This is a rifle with a stock and a 20-inch barrel. These kind of guns were give or take popular around the 1860s, and they fell out of favor fairly quickly. Now this is a new one, it's a reproduction. This has an advantage over the pistol, of course, with the longer barrel and the longer sighting plane. You can get a little more power and more accuracy. That's axiomatic. The downside of it is that when you're trying to shoot a cap and ball firearm and your face is right up here, there's a lot of stuff that splatters back, hence the safety glasses. The other problem is that even with wads or grease or both, there's always that slight chance of a chain fire, and you don't want to have your arm out here like this, knowing that a ball might come out and fly who knows what direction. So you end up shooting it in this kind of position. An interesting thing about this particular gun is, this is not mine, I just picked it up from a colleague this morning. He tells me that this particular gun has been sitting in his gun safe loaded for over 4 years. So this will be an interesting time to test and see if your powder in the chambers will draw moisture. So let's see how it shoots. Even with the glasses, my face still gets splattered with some stuff. And even though we've got the same powder charge that you do with the revolver, with the pistol, you can really feel there's more power in this. And my face is starting to hate it right about now. If you want to reinforce bad habits like flinching, this is a good one to do that. All 6, no hang fires, no chain fires, no duds. You can keep your black powder gun loaded as long as you want. Pretty neat. So, I hope that cleared up some things about black powder revolvers. And as always, don't try this at home on what you call a professional, and thanks for watching Paul's Cap and Ball revolver video.